rest of the panel.
Absolutely.
If you have additional thoughts, we'll come back to that and when you're recognized, if that's
Great.
okay. So,
Thank you.
Yes, thanks again for being here. Thanks for your opening remarks. You know, it's been said that the four main inputs of AI are talent, compute, energy, and data. The federal government houses a tremendous amount of scientific and important data sets that could be leveraged as strategic assets in the U.S. AI leadership. The Open Government Data Act of 2018 requires data assets owned by the federal government whose sharing would not otherwise be prohibited by law to be published in machine-readable format. If each of you first three with particular companies, operating companies, what would each of your companies' efforts to deploy AI, how would that be affected by more access to data? If it's AI ready and if it's machine readable and compatible, how would that affect each of your companies? We'll start with you.
Senator Budd, the access to data is a critical aspect of development for artificial intelligence. However, in healthcare, the ability to have validation data by which you can measure the quality of your solutions that are developed, by which deployers at the institutional level can assess the fit within their personal institution, is one of the greater challenges. So having more robust access to this machine-readable, translatable, and ideally in healthcare outcomes linked data will provide opportunities to actually assess these solutions, not in a vacuum, but against real American data as part of that. So, you know, more robust access to that would be a significant enabler of adoption and innovation of this new technology.
So in the world of radiology, what would be a specific data set that you would look to make more accessible?
Radiology, there are two key areas. It's the images and the reports. And the reports in radiology are one piece of siloed information, yet what happens with that? If that quiet lung mass that I referenced in my opening statement, if that's identified, what percentage of that turns into cancer? How do you understand the progression of that? Being able to access that longitudinal information at scale would enable significant development.
And for something like that in particular with radiology, that would not violate patient privacy?
If appropriately de-identified, which would be a very important aspect of this, absolutely not.
Great, thank you for that. Ms. Sung, what are your thoughts for Siemens Industries?
Chairman, thank you for the question. More available, highly trusted data is gold in industrial AI environments. And something that's very important to recognize is that for industrial AI, the underlying data comes from machines, it comes from manufacturing systems and engineering data sets within the four walls of that factory or the shipyard or production environment. So the more readily available that data is, and in usable formats, the better the generative insights and recommendations that the industrial AI products can make. Thank you.
Very helpful, thank you. Dr. Shelton.
So I think from an operating company perspective, we have to remember that there's really only three ways that we can actually have access to data. The most expensive is we can go out and generate it ourselves, and you see robotics companies trying to do that today via teleoperation. The second is when the data is available on the public internet for free, and this is one of the ways that the modern AI frontier labs have made such rapid progress training their LLMs specifically. But that data does not exist for robots generally. There's no description of human movement or industrial tasks that you can really find on the open internet. And then the third way is simulation. And although there's been a lot of rapid progress, I'm sure you've seen news reports with NVIDIA and others who've done that kind of work, we're still in the early days of that really being viable for large-scale training of robots. So the government release of data is actually helpful a couple of ways. First is it gives us a very broad look at the economy as a whole. Although agility has been focused to date on these internal warehouse jobs, there are broader classes of job that would pull on things like large geospatial data sets and other large public data sources that would be very exciting to have access to. And second is I think it gives us a broad representative look at what people are doing. It's part of the reason why I cited the census data is that the government has a very large role to play here, identifying areas where there are opportunities for robots to get out and do useful work. So excited to be a part of that.
Dr. Shelton, do you have an example of those ideas inside the census data?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's fascinating with this is how large of an opportunity there really was with underemployment in sectors like the warehouse and logistics world. Feeding things like accident data, human performance data and stuff allows us to focus on the very high value tasks that actually improve worker safety, improve worker health, and allow those workers to redeploy elsewhere within the org. So we're excited about being able to tailor what our product offerings are to the needs of the broader workforce.
Dr. Shelton, do you think that would help with adoption? I mean, there's a general fear out there about job replacement. It's sort of a generalized concern. But if you show massive areas of underemployment in a sector such as warehouse and logistics, where there's need for much more workers, do you think that would help with adoption in those areas?
Absolutely. In fact, we see a lot of pressure from the small and medium business community as well that would love to adopt this kind of technology. And you know, it's without name checking a specific retailer, we were approached by a small but nationwide retailer a number of years ago looking for a back warehouse automation solution because they were having staffing challenges. Unfortunately, it was not possible at the time with the technology that was available to us circa 2020 to really engage with them. But I think the broader look at the labor pressures that are faced by those businesses in particular would be super helpful.
To give us a quick snapshot of the timeline, if you had that conversation in 2020,
Correct.
now in 2026, if you had the same conversation, do you have more capabilities?
We do. I think there is a rollout question that we have, which is, do you tackle the low-hanging fruit first, or do you go for the harder end of the spectrum? But certainly, technologically, the advances that AI has shown just in the last, I would call it 3 years, significantly lowers the barrier to entry to address those businesses.
Thank you. Ranking member.
So the administration suggests